And then jumping to, you decided that you wanted to now do a fund. What was different about, obviously you mentioned that it's a blind pool of capital versus so rather than looking at the deal, they're really looking at you and your track record and you mentioned your thesis. What else did you learn about that process of kind of raising especially a first time fund?
Yeah. When you talk about it, as I was going through the syndicate, I think I was gaining a lot more confidence in my ability of being able to raise money for other people. And it was interesting. Raising a fund is like, you have to discover what your secret sauce is. And I think that's really difficult. I would like to think I'm relatively self-aware, but it's hard to like pick. It's like that like instinctual feeling about like what's special about someone is like, you often can't put a name to it, but in raising for a fund, you have to be able to tell that story eloquently and concisely and with emotion and 500 times over. So I think I learned a lot about developing a personal narrative around who I was, who Josh was, how we worked together in the investment process. And then it's been really interesting to reflect on it. It took 9 months to raise, which is shorter than most. So usually like 12 to 18 months to raise a first-time fund. And I think that there was this period where everything was going super great. So people were super familiar with like me and Josh and our stories, and pitching them was like a 20-minute catch-up call, and they were familiar with our work. And then we had this like doldrums where it was like, okay, cool, we have 2 million or something committed, and now we have to go out and pitch people that we've never talked to and have no context for our work. And that was a lot harder, because then you really have to nail like your story, why things that you do are important. You have to like brag about yourself, which is something that I hadn't done like a lot of, or at least not specifically around having a platform, because that was still developing to me. Like it hadn't become as big a part of my identity as an investor. It was just like, oh yeah, I tweet for fun about things that I'm interested in.
Right.
But when you're raising a fund, you have to like put that in graph format and like have demographic breakdowns, and it's not as less vibes, more strategy involved in how you talk about that. And then in terms of investing, I think as we've gone through the fund, we were investing and raising at the same time. And I think that's really difficult to be like context switching all the time between like investors. And I built a lot of empathy for founders going through the fundraising process, which is like most of what we help with as like a fundraising coach, connecting you as a founder with our investors, and just having empathy for what you're going through. Because if you're pitching your business to investors, you're going to have a different layer of abstraction and different information that you need to communicate to them than talking to a founder and pitching your support as an investor to them. So I think that was really like doing mental acrobatics was an interesting learning time. And I think like everyone tells you fundraising is hard, but it's like really hard. And I think that those challenges are shared by anyone who goes out to raise a first-time fund, even for people that had an easy, in quotation marks, time raising their first funds, and then they have to go out and raise their second fund, but they haven't like fundraised cold before. It's a really challenging process where you have to like have your story super, super sharp, and you can't rely on like those relationships like in context for the whole time. So I think like the more as an investor or an operator you can put yourself out there and explain your context, the higher chance that you will enter into a conversation with someone that already has context for who you are as a person, what your values are, how you think about things. It's an incredible way of scaling your time. It's like write about who you are on the internet.